Hello, and welcome to the Rough Edges podcast with Sarah I. Fox. In this podcast, I will guide you through my faith and mental health journey to dispel the stigma surrounding mental illness and to create an empowering resource for those who wish to discover more about these topics. I pray that this podcast will not only bless you, but that it will bring growth and healing to our communities. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rough Edges. We are continuing the conversation about men's mental health, and I am so excited to introduce my guest, Justin Raghoo. Justin Raghoo is a dedicated professional in the sales and finance sector and an active servant in ministry. Born in Trinidad and raised in Brooklyn and now residing in New Jersey, he takes the greatest pride in being a father and sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ on social media. Resilient in both faith and life, he believes that God would not let him stay down. While he loves church in all forms, he embraces the non-traditional ways God is moving. Outside of work and ministry, Justin enjoys pro wrestling, video games, traveling, solo dates, running, obstacle course racing, and hitting the gym. Welcome, Justin.
Let's go, Rough Edges. Let's get it. What's up, Sarah? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. I'm blessed. I'm thankful. Great introduction. You read that well. Who did you write that?
Don't act like you didn't submit that. But it is so good to have you on the podcast. And before we dive into our discussion, what are three things that you are most passionate about and why?
Great question. Three things that I'm most passionate about right now. Number one is worship. Present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Another translation says, which is true worship. That's number one. I love worship, not just singing songs, but my life is worship to God. So passionate about that. I want that to be in everything that I do, even in my mistakes, even when I mess up. How can God redeem this? So I bring that back to God as well. I'm very passionate about reaching people who traditionally used to go to church, like a lot of the young people that used to rock out with us back in the day. Sarah's old, y'all. They used to rock out with us back in the day. I want to reach them. I think about them all the time, right? And I know they know God, I know they love God, but they just probably don't go to church in a traditional fashion like how we used to back in the day. So I'm passionate about going to the highways and the byways to as far as possible to reach those individuals. And then number three, I'm really passionate about being a better version of myself. I challenge myself either in my racing, my running, my gym, reading. I'm really passionate about being the best version of myself. I want to be used by God and just requires me to continue to find ways. God, where else are you looking for me to improve on in my life?
Wow, I love all of those. And also, I'm not old, okay? Like,
Cap.
for the record, let's put it out there.
I guess it's the rough part and the rough edges.
Oh my God. But no, like, honestly, I resonate with a lot of what you said, especially with being a better version of yourself. Because it's
Yeah,
like every day, even though it's really difficult to shape who you want to become, that's
yeah,
still a valuable thing to work at each day. So I really appreciate that.
for sure, for sure.
So I know that faith is very important for you and it's a foundational aspect of who you are. Can you share just a little bit of your faith journey and your testimony and how you got to have that faith in God?
Yeesh. Okay. My grandmother and my mother, and I remember my uncle. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. My mother was in a domestic abusive relationship. She chose the safety of her children and herself over her marriage, and I respect her for that. That took a lot of courage to do. A lot of people would stay in an abusive relationship. She chose not to. And we came here, I was about 3 or 4 years old, and I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. That has been my life. Brooklyn, New York has been my life for decades. I remember Sunday mornings, my grandmother, my mother, my uncle, it was a one-bedroom apartment in Flatbush before Brooklyn was nice. It was a one-bedroom apartment, roaches, mice, people getting shot outside. It was a situation, but God was there, man. And my grandmother, my mother, my uncle, we would do Bible study before church in the morning. We just read through scriptures, and they taught me Psalms 1. I could repeat that from the top of my head. Psalms 121, Psalms 103. And my grandmother just would pour life into me. I didn't know it then, but looking back on it, man, them scriptures, those time with the Lord, it was rooted there. And I remember at Good Tidings Gospel Chapel, shout out Good Tidings, Bedford Stuyvesant, Do or Die. What they had was on Saturdays, Awana. And Awana was like the Boy Scouts, but it was a Christian brethren version of the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts. It was an amazing time. I don't remember who my counselor was, but we'll go every Saturday morning. And they were talking about God being your father and if you want God to be your father. And that's when I accepted God into my life. I was less than 10, 7, 8, maybe about. And I accepted God into my life. I was in the PALS. And then from there, I didn't have my dad, but I had incredible uncles who fit the bill. They were there, supportive, taught me how to drive, taught me everything that I know. At Good Tidings, it was a family of God, as imperfect as the church is. Men, those women, Sister Hunt, Gabby's mom, saw something in me. She used to speak life into me every Sunday, just it was the women, man. They were pouring into me. So I grew up in church. And then I got to the age where I wanted to do more. And I would argue with Jehovah's Witnesses and Hebrew Israelites. And I've learned that arguing is not the way to lead people to salvation. It's about the life that I live. So whether I have the answers or I don't have the answers, I've learned over the years, I'm 41, that I'm not arguing with anybody about truth anymore. If you're in a place to receive, to communicate, there's no reason for us to argue. We'll have a conversation. But if you're not willing to receive, there's no reason for us to communicate. I grew up with a lot of insecurities at the same time. I didn't believe I was good looking. I didn't believe I was smart enough. I didn't believe I was able to do anything. I felt like I was a D, F student. I was a failure. And I kept those things inside of me, but they were festering. And when I got to high school, I went to private school, Ebenezer in Brooklyn, Kings Highway. When I got to high school, it was a culture shock. Ebenezer was a private school. I went to private school from first grade to eighth grade. I get to ninth grade, and these wild Brooklyn kids, what
Yeah.
the heck is wrong with these kids, man? These public school kids, no home training. It was a culture shock. And then I got bullied in my ninth grade, my 10th grade. I was, thrown down the steps, put in the garbage. I remember being dismissed from school. This guy, Darrell, grabbed me, threw me on the floor, boom, just held me on the floor. And I was like, why is this happening to me? That's when I met my friend Michael Salazar, great guy. We're still cool to this day. I called him Jesus because he grabbed Darrell. Like I was a small kid. Darrell's bigger than me. Mike was like a bear. He just took him and just threw him. Like, leave him alone. I was just like, Jesus? So ever since then, I called him Jesus. And we grew a friend group, and it was my boy's house. His family had a home church. I would go to his church, and it was amazing. My life has always revolved around church, but I wasn't always as focused as I needed to be. So I went away to camp, New Horizons, great camp to go to. I went to New Horizons. New Horizons was amazing. They saw something in me. It was people seeing things in me, I think, that God allowed them to point things out in my life. And college, I did college things, alcohol, sex, try to smoke. I didn't like smoking. It was doors that I should have never opened up. I really tried to get my life back together. When I was getting my life back together, I met my ex-wife. It was great. It was amazing. I was married for 12 years. I knew her for a total of 15 years, including the 12 years of marriage. My marriage taught me what it means to be a man of faith. I needed faith. It was difficult. It was a struggle. I was imperfect. I had to love somebody that was imperfect. Need you, God. I couldn't make her do anything. I couldn't make her love me. I couldn't make nothing. It was just really relying on God. When that marriage dissolved, I was in a very vulnerable place, desperate. I was suicidal. I was depressed. I'd never had anxiety. Anxiety hit me in my marriage. A lot of things I never dealt with because I didn't have proper coping mechanisms in my marriage. They were brought to the forefront. It was me trying to handle things on my own. And it was a struggle, for real, for real. But God was with me. God was teaching me. here I am last year, filed for divorce, and I would not have filed for divorce unless I had absolute no other choice but to. I know my Bible. I'm my favorite preacher. I think I'm better than TD Jakes. I think I'm better than a lot of them, but I would not have filed for divorce unless I had no other choice. In the past year, it has been a lot. God has grown me, developed me. I was suicidal. I remember I planned it out. I was gonna go to the Appalachian Mountains. It starts out here in North Jersey. I was gonna buy a knife and just end it all. It was just too much. I couldn't handle all of it. I said, "God, if you don't show up, I'm done." My friend called me, stayed on the phone with me. I shout out to Dwight Kerwin, stayed on the phone with me. And I'm thankful that in the past 13 months, God has shown up for me. So yeah, I would say the past year, my faith in God has deepened even more than what it was before. So I hope that made sense.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
that was great. That was your story, and I'm so glad to see the hand of God on your life, even in the dark moments, like you
Yeah,
mentioned, especially in the past year. I just see God's faithfulness in your
yeah,
life in such a clear way. I'm just so happy that you shared that with me and that your life is continuing to be a testimony in that way. Thank
yeah,
you
for
for sharing.
sure. I'm living in a place of grace. I think at one time I may have been, what is it called? People who think they're better than other people. Maybe I came across that way. That was never my intention. But when you have everything taken away from you, you learn grace. I learned grace very quickly. So I give grace to others when they fall, when they make mistakes. The people by the grace of God that I get to minister to on TikTok and whatnot, I only preach God's grace. Like you're not too far for God. I was far. Like
Mm,
I was far. After the divorce, I was coping in some unhealthy ways and I was all over the place. This thing rocked my world. I was in church and I was just trying to anchor myself back in church, but I understand when people go through things, they're not the best versions of themselves, but it doesn't mean that they're bad people, right?
right.
They need time to cope and for people to walk with them and encourage them and to speak life into them. Community is incredible. I appreciate you saying that, sis.
Hello again. Before you dive into the rest of today's episode, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your support and for hitting that play button. If you want to expand on that support, here are three ways that you can do so. One, leave a review. If anything in today's episode resonated with you, or you would want to share about how the podcast changed your life, you can do so by leaving a review on Apple Podcast or Podchaser. Check out our shop. The Rough Edges Shop is a faith based, women of color owned online shop where you can get a variety of products from tote bags, journals, t shirts, and more. 20% of the proceeds go to a mental health organization. So check it out at roughedgespodcast.com/shop. 3. Connect on social media. Rough Edges is on a wide variety of social media platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and more. If you want to connect outside of listening to the podcast episodes, you can do so on these platforms. If you have any questions, you can check out the episode description or stay to the end for more information. Now, enjoy your episode. And so, given that you've had such a powerful testimony and life journey so far, I want to transition into men's mental health because you
Yeah,
did talk about certain aspects of that. What
yeah,
are your thoughts on the stigma surrounding men expressing their emotions and seeking help for their mental health?
yeah. I think with men and mental health, there needs to be a specialty around men being able to communicate. And what I mean is this, I heard this great example. This is not my example, but men, let's say we speak in colors, red, blue, green, yellow, black, white, five colors. We know those five colors.
Mhm.
But then when women are expressing if their colors, magenta, pumpernickel, like, what are you talking about? I have no idea. So I think we need to get conversations going that revolve around men and our five primary colors, right? Like, let's talk on that granular level. It doesn't mean it's less than, but it's a language that I speak. I'm angry. I'm pissed off, right? I'm horny. I'm whatever it is. Let's have those real conversations. So I think a lot of the healthcare professionals, especially with mental health, is dominated by women. And it's very challenging and also expensive to find therapy that's a man to be your therapist. And if you're a man of color, that percentage goes down even more.
Mhm.
You may not be comfortable speaking to a white woman as a black man about your issues. My therapist was a white woman. She was amazing. I loved her. I was uncomfortable initially, but I spent like 8 years with her. It was great. But that's who I am. I love to talk, but for somebody else who may be struggling, you may want to find somebody who looks like you, sound like you, that you're comfortable with, that you can have your conversations with. That's number one, right? It's just the access for men, it's different. For white people, there's a lot of white therapists. If you're a person of color, that percentage goes down. It's hard for you to find someone who is Middle Eastern. It's hard for you to find somebody who is black. It's difficult. So, and that's why I'm a little bit disappointed that the DEI initiatives, I understand why it was removed, right? I get that argument on that side, but the purpose of it, the heart of it, was to bring the equality of opportunity. And
Mhm.
it's not the equality of outcome. Outcome is not what we're looking for. What we're looking for the opportunity. Can we get more black men to be therapists? If you are interested, we have opportunities for you. If you are a Middle Eastern woman looking to be, we have opportunities for you. So now that those are being challenged, it's harder to find when, for example, I was in the NICU, bunch of white women in the NICU, nurses. You know what I mean? I'm not against it. If you're there, you'll take care of these babies in the NICU, do it. But I would have loved to see people of color. And there were very few and far in between. Access representation, it matters, right? To help people who don't generally go for this type of help to find somebody they can relate to. That's number one. And number two, the level of comfortability. I think finding spaces for men to be able to speak, not just the professional, but for the spaces for men to speak. There aren't a lot of spaces where men can let their hair down, their men can go in and feel safe. I think we need to create more spaces for men to be able to talk about men issues. Either it's fatherhood, or I got this baby and I don't know what to do, or I'm going through a divorce, or I'm heartbroken, or whatever. Creating spaces for men to have those conversations, even in church, is dominated by women. I just think finding spaces for men to be able to speak is super clutch. So professionals and spaces are the two things we need to attack so we can get more men to discuss and talk about mental health.
Yes, absolutely. You highlighted some very important points. The one about access, because it's true, there are not many men that are therapists, psychiatrists, and psychologists. The pool for men in those areas is very small.
Right.
And then also on top of that, you have the cultural competence aspect of it, where a lot of these mental health professionals don't really have that component in the healthcare. And so you lose the cultural understand that creates more barriers. And another thing you mentioned in terms of creating spaces for men to speak on these issues, I do agree that is also limited because it's very female dominant area. That's
Right.
one of the reasons why I wanted to have this season in the first place, because having more of these conversations, especially with men, could open the doors for us to continue to create those safe spaces.
You said cultural competency. There's this, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's people use it as an example. This woman had just given birth. The nurse came to check on her, and then she walked out. She said, I gotta call the psych people to come talk to her because there's something wrong. So the patient was an African American woman. The nurse was Caucasian. She's talking to another nurse who's African American. And she's like, what do you mean? What happened? She said, she's in there and she's doing this.
Oh,
To her head, we got to call somebody to come look at her because there's something wrong with her. So, because of the cultural competency, the Caucasian nurse didn't understand what Slapping your head means you got cornrows, your head itches, right? They don't, I don't
Right.
want to mess my hair up.
Right.
So the cultural competency, she was good-hearted. She didn't mean wrong, but because she didn't have the context or the
Yeah.
cultural competency to be able to say, oh, well, this is what we're talking. So the African American nurse walks in and she sees her do, and she walks right back out. She's like, she's scratching her head. Stop it. She didn't understand.
Right.
So
Right.
cultural competency, like our history, where we came from, our stories, it matters, right? So if anybody's trying to erase your culture, if anyone's trying to erase who you are and where you came from, male, female, lower class, broke, whatever you came from, they're trying to erase that. It's a disservice to our culture, a disservice to your community, you not bringing or not being able to bring your full authenticity to the table.
Mm.
Because it shows that as a country and as a people, we're very diverse, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And that is a hilarious story because because I immediately knew
You know what it
like
was?
what patting on the head. I'm like, yeah,
Right.
it's itching, so you gotta
Right.
that is so funny.
She's going crazy in there.
Yeah, like oh man, it's true. It kind of speaks to why cultural competence is important because
Right.
your culture is part of who you are. In order to go to therapy, you have to be vulnerable about the parts of yourself that have been shaped by culture, spirituality, and all these other
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. My
yeah.
my therapist, again, white woman. I think she has blue eyes, no hazel eyes, but like white woman, right? And she's not a Christian. And
Mhm.
I'm a Christian black man. But even if we don't have the cultural competency, we do have the human interaction of empathy. She was such a professional and very empathetic and did her homework, right? Even if she didn't have the same culture as me, because she was coming from a place of I want to understand, right? And I'm going to do my own research even outside of this, right? It helped me to be more vulnerable and be more open. Yes, the cultural competency to see somebody look like me, that's great, but it doesn't mean I negate the individuals who don't look like me, but who are willing to do the work to help me be better.
No, that's an excellent point. And speaking of like therapy, you mentioned your therapist. I wanted to know what was your experience like in seeking help? And did you have any reservations or hesitations before you sought help? And how did you overcome that to get the help?
Yeah, that's great. I'm not crazy. I don't got no problems. I'm good. Like, I'm gonna pray about this thing and God's gonna get me through. He gonna deliver me from it. But a lot of times healing is in community. Healing generally isn't a solo act. So I was forced into therapy. I was in the height of my addictions. I struggled with sexual addictions. It was pixels, it was pornography, then pornography. Pixels turned to people. I didn't coin that, somebody else did. It was problematic in my life. My ex-wife forced me into therapy. I didn't want to go. And I went just to appease her. However, over time, I fell in love with it. I started my first 12-step program going from counseling, going to therapy. I was scared to go into a sex addicts anonymous. I'm a Christian. Sex Addicts Anonymous. I'm a preacher. I preach the word of God. I was scared to go. I walked in, and this is the thing about sin, right? The pattern of the world wants to divide us. You over here, all those people, all that gender, all those people who are of that sexual orientation, it's looking to separate us. I
Mm.
walked into that meeting with men, and it was a range of men, different age ranges, different sexual orientations, different nationalities, different skin colors. And we were all there because sin was wrecking our lives. Like
Mhm.
sin did not discriminate. We could discriminate, say, oh, black people this, black people that, right? Gay people, sin don't care. Sin was looking to wreck every single person. The devil don't care about what country you're from, don't care about the complexion of your skin, how much money you make. I'm here to wreck your life. Going into those spaces at first was challenging, but I walked in and I saw people just like me, broken, difficult relationships, daddy issues. When we would start talking about fathers in that group, only white men, it doesn't matter. The entire gamut of people, tears. A lot of the issues came from childhood, things that were pushed onto us that we had no idea was being pushed onto us. And now we're in this position where we have no idea how to cope properly.
Mm.
And then with therapy, it was a couple things. It was what I needed, right? So, for example, when I first started therapy, it was an African American male. He was an older guy. I needed this daddy kind of figure. And he was cool. He was very patient, very soft spoken, and very knowledgeable. I liked him, and he was good for a season. When you're in therapy, and if you're doing therapy right, there's seasons that you have with your therapist, and then some seasons come to an end. That season came to an end with him. I had to find a new therapist. I jumped around a little bit. I was okay with therapy, but it didn't feel like this was the person I needed to be with. So I kept looking. I did a couple of sessions with one therapist. He just talked way too much. I felt like I was the therapist. Another therapist, he wanted me to take an exam, like answer these 50 questions and answer those questions. And he was like, oh my gosh, this stuff is off the charts. You are out there. Oh my goodness. And I was like, yeah, I'm never coming back to this. Like he made me feel like crap. I was already feeling like crap in other places in my life. I didn't want to come to therapy and feel like crap more.
Yeah.
I didn't continue with him. But when I found this therapist, we stayed together for almost 6, 7 years. And an important part of therapy, especially when you're struggling with addictions and issues, is you have to get to that place where you are being honest. Not just honest enough, but you're being honest. I did that thing. I'm taking accountability. I did that thing. I messed up. Yesterday, I messed up. I watched porn yesterday. You need to get to a point where you're being very honest. A lot of times people struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, or whatever, compulsive behavior, usually we're not really being honest.
Mm.
And because we're not being honest, it's hard for us to cope. So that has been my journey. I'm no longer with that therapist because last year she was having a baby and she's like, it's time for us to break up. I have to find somebody else. And the time I needed her the most, but she's like, Justin, you've done a lot of work, right? You can get through this, right? I did find another therapist. I had 2 or 3 therapists over the past year, and I'm looking for that landing place now, right? For somebody I can go to. Before I was going to therapy every week, boom, 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 every week. And then it went from every week to bi-weekly, and then it went to monthly. So now I'm on a month, and as needed, I can call my therapist and set up an appointment. So a lot of gains has been made, but I remember I had to stop lying to my therapist about quote unquote progress. I thought healing was linear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. I thought that's what it was. That's not healing. It's 1, 2, -1, 5, all over the place, right? 7, 8, 9, nope, -10. Healing is not linear, it's all over the place. But like the stock market, I keep moving up. Even though I may fall, I may crumble, I keep getting back up and I'm moving in a forward momentum. So that has been my journey with therapy. Another long-winded answer, Sarah. I'm sorry. I'm gonna cut it down.
No, that was great. And like you hit on a lot of major points, especially about your journey in finding a therapist. Because a lot of people have the misconception that once you find a therapist, you have to stick with that person for your
Right.
entire journey. And that's not necessarily true. And I love that you explained the journey in finding somebody that was a right fit for you. And
Correct.
I resonate with that also because I had to also find like my fit with a therapist as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's nothing wrong with having to change that, you know?
Right. And advocating for yourself. Like challenge yourself and advocate for yourself. You have to find out, am I running because I'm uncomfortable? Because if you're uncomfortable in therapy, it's a good thing. Sit there with it. But sometimes we're running because we're uncomfortable, and that's not what you should be doing either, right? So you have to figure out, what am I doing? Am I running or am I just uncomfortable? And if you're uncomfortable, that's okay. The purpose of therapy is to get you to a place where you're comfortable with being uncomfortable because
Yeah.
life ain't always going to be comfortable.
Right, absolutely. Have you ever struggled with the idea that having mental health issues is a lack of faith? And how did you manage those feelings?
Yes, but it wasn't external. It was a lot of my inner dialogue. It was me feeling like I needed to be Superman for my family, for my former wife, for my kids. Like, let me, white knuckle through this thing. And it challenged me because it wasn't going away. The struggle was more so internal. A majority of it was internal. It was community. I'm gonna always say that. It's always been community. I go to my men's group, a great men's group out here in New Jersey called Paul's Ministries. We get together, talk about addictions, and it's centered around Jesus. So a lot of it has been around community. I haven't had anybody in church say, "You go to therapy? You're crazy." And I think in a lot of church circles now, therapy has been more normalized than it was in the 90s or the early 2000s. I love that therapy. People are loving on therapy and being a part of it. When I was getting my master's degree, I took a course in counseling. It was two graduate level classes, and it was really good. We had to write a paper. And one thing that stood out to me was that less than 10% of churches are ready to handle a mental health crisis if it comes up.
Wow.
Right now, you from Brooklyn.
Yes.
You know how many churches are
Yes, on
on a
every
block.
block.
Just on one block, you're gonna count four churches on one side. You look over, there's another five
Yeah.
churches on the other
Yes.
side. Nine churches
Yep.
just on one, like going to Queens. Now, if I
Yep.
think of the Bible Belt, there's so many churches, and the statistics show that less than 10% are ready to handle a mental health crisis. I would also respectfully give a horror story that happened to me. We were in couples counseling with the church, and they were not licensed, and it was just bad advice that had a major impact on the cadence direction of the relationship also. So when you're there's just good-hearted people, right? But when it comes, I, I I would take my car to a proper mechanic, not some dude on the street like, yo, I will fix that tire for you. Give me $300. Like, no, you
Right.
would not do that. You wouldn't
Right.
in your car. You walk in with a broken leg. You would not just go to some random person to fix your broken leg. If I have a broken heart, someone broke my spirit, someone broke my soul. I'm not gonna go to a licensed professional to fix me. You don't pray for that car to get fixed. You take it to a
Right.
mechanic. You don't pray
Yep.
for me to get fixed. You were in a car accident. You out here limping, leg all across the street. You
Right.
praying, but you know you need a doctor to put my leg back together. How much more your soul? So
Mm.
Psalms 23, I've been staying in Psalms 23. You asked about faith. You shouldn't have done that. You didn't open me up. Psalms 23 says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul."
Mm.
There's some places that only God can restore.
Yes.
Therapy is amazing, right? But there's some places that we have to give it to God, that it's so deep that only God can restore those places. So
Mm.
I will land the plane on, I haven't had anybody make me feel like therapy wasn't a good thing in church. It was more so people who were too close to me, too close to my addictions, too close to the issues I was going through, and they wanted me to get better immediately. They didn't understand what forgiveness meant. If you are close to somebody going through a mental health crisis, addictions, or depression, or whatever it is, the worst thing you could do is make them feel like they need to get over it immediately.
Yeah.
If you're close to that person, the best thing you can do is support their journey and then find counseling for yourself to find out what can I do to help as well.
Right.
A lot of people, there's moms, dads, spouses. My husband is dealing with addiction, and she's on his back, and she doesn't know she's making him more addicted. Her heart's in the right place, but she doesn't know that adding extra pressure doesn't help the situation. So usually, it's never been people in the church. It's usually people who are too close, and they need to put their hands on it because they want you to be better, but they actually make things worse.
Wow. I love what you mentioned about when we need to fix our car, we go to a mechanic, and when we break our leg, we're going straight to the hospital and stuff. Like, we're
Right.
not sitting with that. And there's a major disconnect, especially in the church, when it comes to the spiritual and the psychological. I know therapy is becoming more normalized, but there's still that stigma around like, oh, mental health issues are a spiritual problem, or they're like an indicator of a lack of faith. Maybe you should have prayed more. That's why you're depressed. Or you need to read your Bible. That's why you have anxiety. And,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
we
yeah,
often conflate the two to the
yeah,
point where we don't see that there needs to be a balance. I
yeah.
love what you mentioned about going to a licensed professional. I love the church. I grew up in church. I'm a born again believer, but I had to realize that God put people in our lives and gave these professionals wisdom to help us. So
Correct.
I can't say, oh, God's gonna heal me and not take my medication. Like,
Right, right.
like, because
Mhm,
that
mhm.
is gonna cause a lot of other issues. So I love that you brought that up in terms of faith and mental health working together and
Right.
not it being one or the other.
I'll add another part to that. Mechanic, doctor. You didn't say, let me find a Christian mechanic,
True.
right? Let me find a
True.
Christian doctor to, my tooth hurts. I'm gonna find a Christian dentist. Until I find a Christian dentist, I'm not taking his tooth out. Why
Right.
don't you find a Christian therapist? You know what I mean? Like
Uh,
that's a great add-on. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, like, if I'm going through something and I need help, I'm gonna find the therapist, the licensed professional that I can rely on that will help you. So I
yeah.
don't look for the Christian CVS worker. It doesn't apply in other places in my life.
That's a good point. We put so much emphasis on like, oh, I gotta find a Christian therapist, or I have to find like some type of spiritual remedy to deal with a psychological issue. The two can work together. I mean,
Correct.
there are certain things that are not solely psychological, and there are things that are not solely spiritual,
Right.
but like you mentioned, there are certain things that only God could restore. In the meantime, go see a professional. It
Correct.
doesn't have to be all or nothing when it
Right.
comes to that?
Yeah. And you could mix things up, right? Like my therapist was a spiritualist, like crystals and all that stuff. But
Uh,
cool. I had my Christian men's group that I would go
yes.
to. I would still go to church on Sundays. So I could pull from here, I could pull from there. Why not? It's not all or nothing. I can create the cadence, I can create the things that I need in this season of my life that's going to get me to a place of healing.
Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to share some statistics with you for men's mental health. It comes from Self-Space, which is a mental health research website. It says that 40% of men have never spoken to anyone about their mental health, and
Mhm.
29% of those men say that they are too embarrassed to speak about it, while another 20% say there is a negative stigma. So, what are your thoughts on those statistics, and do any of them ring true for you?
I think those numbers are great. That means almost 50% of men are having these conversations. I would think 10, 15 years ago, that number was a lot lower. So is it where we want it to be? No, but I thank God that it's trending in the right direction. And I see it in my men's group. I see it in my spaces with the men that I rock with. Maybe my space is different, right? I don't know, but I'm seeing more men that I interact with that are willing to have conversations and to connect with other men. And so I think those numbers are good because it's trending in the right direction. I would say 20 years ago, it was probably 50% less than where it is now.
Yeah, that's true. I like asking that because I like to see the different reactions from men. And so far across the season, it's been a surprise that the numbers were so low. I thought it would be higher. But
Right,
yeah, you make a good point. Like it's becoming more normalized,
right,
but I do want to see more safe spaces where men can actually share about their mental health and everything. But we are taking a step in the right direction for sure.
right.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rough Edges podcast with Sarah I. Fox. If you want more updates on the podcast, you can follow on Instagram at rough.edges.podcast, or you can visit the official podcast website at roughedgespodcast.com. Thanks again for listening and have a wonderful day.